Hi, and welcome to the Capital Extension Fall 2025 Design Update. I'm Carlos Galindo Elvira, Community Engagement Manager here at Valley Metro. Thank you so much for joining us during your lunch hour. Before we begin, we want to let you know that the live Spanish interpretation is available for this meeting. There may be occasional pauses throughout the presentation to ensure our English and Spanish presentation are in sync. I would like to introduce our wonderful Spanish interpreter, Paulette.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Paulette y soy intérprete de español. Si gusta escuchar la presentación en español, accese a los números en pantalla. De igual manera, se pondrá el número en el chat para que pueda accesar o llamar en cualquier momento. Gracias.
Gracias, Paulette. I would like to introduce the Capital Extension's Community Outreach Coordinator, Erica Rubio, to go over some virtual meeting tips.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Before we jump in, I want to share a few tips for today's meeting. First, know that all participants have been muted to avoid background noise during the presentation. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. You can submit your questions anytime during the meeting using the Q&A function located at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. I will share additional Q&A instructions at the end of the presentation. There is also closed captioning available for this meeting. And if you're like me, you love good closed captions. You can turn the captioning option on from the meeting menu in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. And finally, we hope everyone has a smooth experience at today's meeting. But if you have any issues at all, you can call WebEx support or call into the meeting using the numbers on screen now. We will also add those numbers to chat. Okay, let's get started. Joining me for today's presentation is Paul Lopez, Project Manager for the Capital Extension, and Marcus Coleman, the City of Phoenix's Light Rail Administrator. We will begin today by reviewing the history of the Capital Extension project and its connection to the I-10 West project. You will then learn more about the Phoenix City Council's decision process, which will determine how light rail moves forward in Phoenix. You will get to view and compare the 3 new routes that are proposed for the Capital Extension. And we will wrap up by letting you know all of the different ways that you can submit your feedback before moving into a question and answer session with the team. Your feedback is incredibly important to this process. We take every bit of feedback that you submit, whether it is by email, whether it is in person, whether it is a form that you fill out online, and we summarize that feedback into a report. That report also includes a technical review done by the project team, and then we take all of that and we send it to Phoenix City Council to help them understand the public's opinions, values, and hopes for the project before they vote on how to move forward. So Phoenix City Council is voting on how the capital extension moves forward in January. And so I think it's important that we now share how the capital extension and the I-10 West extension have been historically linked. The Capital and I-10 West extension were originally approved as one long project in 2012, and you see a historical map of that here on screen now. A few years later, in 2016, Phoenix City Council voted to split the project into 2 phases. Phase 1 became the Capital Extension, which would build the critical first step in taking the light rail system west to the Capital District. Phase 2 became the I-10 West project, which would travel west to the Desert Sky Transit Center. So now I would like to introduce Paul Lopez to explain more details about the future I-10 West project.
Thank you, Erica. So as you can see on the screen, the 10 West project is approximately, can we go back a slide? The 10 West project is approximately 10 miles in length and it extends from the CAPEX project. The CAPEX project you can see on the bottom right-hand corner, and it also blown up on the display on the upper right, connects our current system, which is outlined in a green line there. It's a loop system. It stops roughly about 3rd Avenue, and it connects through the state capitol area into the 10 West project. The 10 West project is outlined with multiple stops here, and roughly it's about 8 proposed locations with the white dots, and the gray line represents the I-10 West alignment. The 10 West alignment would basically go through the center of I-10 and run westerly up until about 43rd, 47th Avenue, at which point it'll transition to the north side of the freeway, and it'll run on the north side of I-10 all the way down to 79th Avenue before transitioning to the north and making its way to Desert Sky at 79th Avenue. One important thing to note about this alignment is that allowing light rail to travel through the center of the freeway allows it to travel in a much more efficient manner and at higher speeds because it's in the freeway prism. It doesn't have to contend with traffic signals and street lights like it does on local streets. So those are all important things to note about this particular alignment with 10 West. And with that, I will pass it back over to Erica.
Thank you very much, Paul. Okay, so this slide here shows the complete history of the CAPEX and 10 West timeline together up until the 2016 point in which they were separated into 2 projects. It's a long timeline and you can screenshot it, review it later, but for now I'm going to highlight 2 very important dates and what they meant for the project. So I'll start back in 2024. 2024 is when SB 1102 was signed into law. SB 1102 did 2 very important things in regards to CAPEX. First, it ensured that Prop 479 could go on the ballot, so Maricopa County voters could have their say in transit funding in the community. But it also enacted a new restriction around the Capitol Mall. So that meant that light rail or any transit could not come within 50 yards of the state capitol plaza. And so that meant that the team had to go back to the drawing board and consider how they could adopt the route now that we were no longer able to go near the capitol. And so that outcome, the outcome of having to shorten the turnaround for the CAPEX project from 19th Avenue to 15th Avenue led to the next very important date in 2025. So in 2025, we went out to the public, and I'll ask for the next slide, please. We went out to the public using the map that you see on screen now to ask the question, how does the public want CAPEX to connect to I-10 West? There were 3 different routes proposed, one that went north on 15th Avenue, one that went south on 15th Avenue, and one that went south on 16th. And we used this map to get a feel for the public's priorities and what they were looking for when it came to making that connection between the 2 projects. There were some very clear themes in that round of outreach. And I'll add here that we collected that feedback starting in May all the way through October, so not too long ago. And in what we heard, the clear themes were a support for community development. We often know that where light rail goes, economic development and investment follows. So people were excited for the opportunity for community development around the route. They were excited for the preservation of historic neighborhoods. They wanted to make sure that whatever route was selected did not impact historic homes. And another common theme that we heard was maintaining the ease of access for commuters going in and out of the Capitol building and the nearby government buildings. So it was the feedback that we collected during this round of outreach that ultimately informed how we updated the routes that we will present to you later today. Thank you. So Before we show you the brand new updated routes, I would like to tell you about a very important decision that Phoenix City Council has to make in January of next year. When you fill out the feedback form at the end of this presentation, there are multiple things to consider. The first thing to consider is if you prefer the capital extension to move forward as planned with with one of the 3 new routes that we're going to present, or if you are open to the idea of a reevaluation. So that reevaluation would take a look at how high capacity transit reaches West Phoenix overall. So that means that when you are submitting your feedback, question A will ask you, which do you prefer to adopt a new route and move forward or reevaluate? And question 2 will ask you, which of the new routes do you prefer from what we presented? Now, to talk more about the new routes and to share those details, I would like to invite Paul Lopez.
Next slide, please. One more. Okay, so the first alternative route, back one slide, please, is our 16th Avenue North route. As you look at the depiction on the screen, we have our existing system down around 3rd Avenue in Washington and 3rd Avenue in Jefferson. That was completed with our recent South Central completion, and there were 2 tracks stubbed out to the west to connect to the CAPEX in the future. The CAPEX project right now that's being proposed, this first alignment, connects at Washington and 3rd Avenue and runs westerly till about 4th Avenue. On the other side, it also extends from Jefferson and 3rd Avenue down to 4th Avenue and Jefferson. At 4th Avenue and Jefferson, both of those single tracks, meaning that the train is running one direction on each of those, combines, and it runs side by side from 4th Avenue and Jefferson all the way down to about Cudahy or 14th Avenue. In that area, just really quickly, it's important to understand that it's a single track loop in that area, meaning that westerly trains go on Washington and easterly trains go on Jefferson. And at 4th Avenue, the 2 trains combine into a combined guideway side by side going down to 14th Avenue. From that point at 14th Avenue, it will go due north to Washington, where it will then direct to the west along Washington through the Washington alignment and turning just in front of Wesley Bowen Memorial Park before it veers north and goes all the way down to Van Buren. Along this alignment, there's stations roughly on the east side of 7th Avenue in Jefferson, a proposed station right around 12th Avenue to 15th Avenue, and then a 3rd station up by Wesley Bowen Park just north of the Adams Street alignment. At the point of Van Buren, it would connect to the future 10 West extension and go down Van Buren westerly, ultimately to 17 before it connects to the center of I-10, like I mentioned earlier. On the left side of the screen, you'll see that it's roughly about a 1.3 mile run of track. The schedule impacts are fairly low in that it's basically within the existing area that we've been looking at. And as far as estimated property or building impacts, those are relatively low as well. Again, we're within the existing area we previously looked at. Now, if we could go to the 16th Avenue South alternative. So starting with this alternative, it's very similar to the North alternative down at the beginning by City Hall. You can see our existing loop and section there up to 3rd Avenue. From that point, this line's represented by green, this alternate, and it also is a single track loop around 4th Avenue, very similar to the North option. Where this alignment differs is as we go further to the west, instead of going north at 14th Avenue, we continue until point at 16th Avenue, and then we go due south. We go south until about the Madison alignment, and then we change direction and go westerly up until just past 17th Avenue. At that point, the CAPEX project would terminate and we would stop. Some important things of note on this one is the stations are exactly the same at 7th Avenue and roughly 12th to 15th Avenue. But our 3rd station, you'll notice, isn't north over by Wesley Bowen Park, but instead it's south at 17th Avenue. In addition to that, this segment of alternative would become elevated, meaning that it's going up from grade beginning west of 15th Avenue, and it would be elevated all the way as we get to the west. No matter which option we choose, north or south, both of these would have to get over the BNSF Railroad, which is just to the west of 19th Avenue. And this is part of the reason that we go elevated on this south alignment. That'll help us to get over the BNSF Railroad in the future. So again, to reiterate, at 17th Avenue, we would be at an elevated station, and we would begin to elevate the track just west of 15th Avenue, being at full elevation by the time we get to roughly 16th Avenue in Madison. One other thing of note is that the I-10 connection point is a little different in this alternative. It basically extends from that 17th Avenue stopping point westerly, and then it migrates down to Jackson Street. Right around the 19th Avenue area, you'll see a little bit of a reverse curve there. It'll go down Jackson further to the west before hitting the I-17 North Frontage Road. It'll join onto the I-17 northbound frontage road until getting to Van Buren, and that's where it basically becomes the same as the north alternative for 10 West. From that point, it'll transition over to the middle of I-10. Again, to the left, we also have compared this. There's 1.3 miles of track on this one as well, so very similar in length. The schedule impacts are low because, again, we're within our existing footprint that we've been looking at. And then the building impacts and property impacts we anticipate would be low on this one as well. If we can go to the third alternative. Next slide. The third alternative is called 7th Avenue South, or I'm sorry, 7th Avenue North. And this alternative, all the way up to 7th Avenue, is very similar to the previous two alternatives in that we have single track loop that we extend to 4th Avenue. And then at the intersection of 4th Avenue and Jefferson, it becomes a double track, side-by-side track running east and west. At that point, it extends to 7th Avenue and then would turn due north from 7th Avenue and Jefferson all the way north to Van Buren. At the intersection of Van Buren and 7th Avenue, it's very likely that it would be elevated. That's a very complicated intersection with 5 different directions of 5 different legs at the intersection. And so we would be elevated more than likely going westerly from 7th Avenue and Van Buren, stopping at a point down at 16th Avenue. That entire reach is more than likely going to be elevated. We, at this particular alignment, have a station again proposed just east of 7th Avenue. And then we have another one roughly just west of 7th Avenue on Van Buren, and then a third one down by 15th to 16th Avenue. And you'll see those represented by the white dots. From the termination point on this particular alignment for CAPEX, being the third alternative, it would be that red dashed line going down Van Buren, getting over the BNSF Railroad, staying elevated, and then basically going down to Van Buren and I-17, where it would basically proceed north to go to the 10 to the center island and run in further west, as previously mentioned. This particular alternative, if you look on the left, is about 1.2 miles of track. The schedule impacts on this one, however, are medium, as are the building and property impacts. And that is because this one goes a little bit north of the area we were previously considering and happens to be outside of our NEPA clearance area right now, or our environmental clearance area. So this one could take a little bit more time to basically get to production. With that, that gives us the 3 different alternatives. And I will be happy to go to the next slide, which gives us a table comparison. Oh, I'm sorry. One more slide. This slide actually compares. Oh, go back one, Mariska, please. This exhibit compares all 3 different alternatives. So again, the purple is representing the 7th Avenue North, the last one I covered. The green is representing the middle one I covered, which is the 16th Avenue South alternative. And then the kind of cyan or blue colored with stripes on it represents the 16th Avenue North. As you can see on all of them, they have red dashes on how they get to I-10, but this is an important slide because it compares all 3 alternatives on one area side by side so that you can definitely reference them. And if you go to the next slide, Mariska, this slide is basically our table that compares all of the alternatives. It compares the 16th Avenue North, 16th Avenue South, and 7th Avenue alternative. Also, in the last column, you'll notice we also compare the reevaluation alternative, or the reevaluation option. So if you remember at the beginning, Erica claimed that there were two different decisions that the council had to make. One is proceed with one of the alternatives, which are the three represented in the left columns, or reevaluate, which is the one represented in the far right column. As you can see, comparisons side by side, all of them are roughly about 1.3 to 1.2 miles as far as the alternatives proposed. Their impacts, as you can see on schedule and property, are low for the 16th Avenue options, however, medium for the 7th Avenue options. Now, as we discuss the reevaluation opportunity, if council were to decide that, we don't know exactly where that route would go or what the mode of transit would be, nor do we know what the schedule impacts are. However, we feel that they would be more significant than either of the three alternatives proposed, which is why you see a rating of high. And then we also don't know exactly what the property or right-of-way impacts would be because we're not really moving forward with that at this time as far as design is concerned. So that kind of completes my summary of the three different alternates as well as the option for council to reevaluate. And with that, I'd like to then pass it over to Marcus Coleman, the City of Phoenix Light Rail Administrator, and he's going to talk about the importance of feedback in this process.
Thank you, Paul. Um, as Thank you, Paul. As you just noted, feedback is the most critical portion of where we are today. We're really making sure that not only are we meeting with stakeholders through public meetings and one-on-one meetings, but we're holding forums like this so that we can make sure that all of our community that are either being directly impacted or could potentially be impacted are aware of what's happening when it comes to our light rail project. So as Paul stated and Erica stated earlier, all of this that we're going through today is leading towards a council decision that will be made on January 27th. On January 27th, our full council will have a decision to make between one of two options. The first option is to adopt a locally preferred alternative, which is a route for the CAPEX project. Or the second option is to reevaluate high capacity transit options for reaching West Phoenix. As Paul stated before, both of these options have challenges that come along with them, but that's why it's important for us to have the feedback from yourselves. So what I would strongly suggest is if you are able to share this information, we have all of the information that you've seen here today, we have available through our valleymetro.org/CAPEX website. There they have a digital version of our feedback form, which we strongly encourage everyone to fill out that form. We also have a QR code that can be scanned. I think that is on our next slide, that we have a QR code that can be scanned that makes it easier to take you directly to that feedback form. What we're hopeful for, if you can even take a screenshot of this, you can share it with your neighbors, with your friends, family members, co-workers, because we really need your help to make sure that we're reaching all of the community. It's extremely important that we have representation for as many of our community members as we can and our stakeholders and property owners, so that our council is informed of what the community what their viewpoint and their vantage point is, and how they feel that the council should move forward with this project or with these two options. And so with that being said, once again, we thank you for taking your time to be here with us today to go through these options. The QR code will continue to be available. We do have all the meeting materials that have been covered here today. We have them on the valleymetro.org/CAPEX website, as well as a narrated version of this presentation. So those who are not able to join us either virtually or in person, they can still at their own leisure and on timing availability, be able to go to that website and view the presentation and have it narrated to them as if they were here with us today. And so with that, I will close my speaking so that we can turn it over to Erica to inform us what is next for our question and answer portion of the presentation.
All right, thank you very much, Marcus. Now I'm going to tell you how you can join in on the Q&A portion of this meeting. There are two ways that you can ask a question. So first is the option to submit a written question. If you look towards the bottom right-hand side of this meeting app, you'll see a button that says Apps. You click the Apps button, and then you should see a box that says Audience Q&A. If you type your question into that box there, it will then be reviewed and read by a moderator. So that is option 1. Now let's talk about option 2. Option 2 is asking a question verbally. So to use this option, if you are on your desktop or mobile phone, you will find the raise hand button. Raising your hand lets us know who would like to speak, who has a question to ask. Once it is your turn, we will prompt you by asking you to unmute. Be sure to hit the unmute button on your screen, and then it will be your turn to ask your question. If you are using a phone line to call in today, you will hit *3 to raise your hand. If you are then called on and asked to unmute, you will hit *6 when prompted. So we'll give folks some time to figure that out and familiarize yourself with the web app. Again, you can ask questions either verbally or written, whichever you are comfortable with. And from there, we will go ahead and start answering questions. Moderators, can we please get the first written question?
Yes, I'd be happy to. First one, question with a follow-up comment. What was the rationale behind SB 1102? To begin with, everything seems to be, this is why we can't do the original CAPEX plan, but nothing about the rationale as to why this even happened in the first place. I am concerned as the more reevaluation we do, we will lose our status with FTA.
I will answer that question. Thank you very much for that question. To how that came to be as part of our proposition Prop 400 extension, part of negotiating that extension into what we call today our Prop 479 momentum plan. There were some concessions that had to be made. There were legislators at the state legislation that felt that light rail within the perimeter of the state capitol would create complications. And so they passed a state bill, that passed 1102 and was signed into law by our governor, which prohibit us to build within that zone that was expressed earlier by Erica. And so due to that, we have to abide by state law, and we are not able to adhere or implement that original locally preferred alternative, which requires us to pivot. And so we were continue to work with our stakeholders along our alignment. We came with 3 initial options, and as we worked through that iterative process of receiving feedback and working closely with the stakeholders that were along those alignments, we were able to refine the design and bring it down to the 3 alternatives that we're able to share with you here today. As far as our relationship with the FTA, we are in constant communication with our partners at FTA Region 9, or the Federal Transit Administration Region 9, sorry, us and our acronyms. They are fully aware of the public meetings that we're holding to date, and they are also aware of the council action that will be ensued on January 27th of 2026.
Follow-up question. Why are we deciding on a route again when the truncated route was what was supposed to move this project forward? The more we keep changing it up, the more we keep having to choose a new route, the higher chance that we lose the project altogether, which would be very unfortunate. See I-10 bus tunnel.
So what I would say to that is similar to the previous question. Due to the State Bill 1102, we are prohibited to moving forward with the locally preferred alternative that was originally passed by our City Council, Valley Metro Board, and MAG.
If I may add, Marcus, so we began having to conduct additional outreach because of 1102, and that brought us to the different proposed routes that we presented in May. Um, After that May feedback, we analyzed that data. We heard what the public was saying in regards to the preservation of historic neighborhoods and also I will say, logistic impacts to the government buildings. And it was that feedback, that very robust and inclusive feedback that we used to adopt our design, the updated routes.
Next question. I understand there is currently an A line and B line. Would the CAPEX be part of the B line or would that be a different line?
I can field that question. So it would be an extension of the A line. So the A line currently runs to the east, all the way down to Gilbert Road and Main Street. This extension would push us to the west. The B line primarily runs from our south central extension all the way north to Metro Parkway area. So the B line is a north-south route and the A line is an east-west route.
Thank you, Paul. Next question. What does the reevaluation high capacity transit alternatives option ultimately entail? Could that mean the scrapping of the entire project, studying of new alignments not within the study area, replacement with buses? I would just like to get a little clarification on what that could look like.
I'll answer that question. You are correct that there are several things that could be meant by the reevaluation. The ultimate answer is that we will not know the full scope of that option until City Council takes action. City Council would have to define what that option is. As far as high capacity transit, right now in the Valley, the three resources of high capacity transit that we currently have at our disposal are light rail, bus rapid transit, and streetcar. So as we look to do a reevaluation, and that could be with or without the CAPEX project, that reevaluation would look to see how we could provide, efficient and economic high capacity transit to West Phoenix. What that scope would look like or what that scope would be determined by the direction that would be given by our city council.
Thank you. If we end up reevaluating the CAPEX project, would that mean I-10 West would also be dead in the water?
The I-10, as Erica stated during the presentation, the I-10 West and CAPEX project were initially brought forward as one single project. However, over time, the project was separated into two individual projects. Right now, the way that our T2050 program lays out both of those projects, the CAPEX project would be necessary in order for us to continue with the I-10 West project. If a reevaluation were to be selected by our council, that could be part of the scope, is to look at not only the CAPEX with or without, or other options of still providing high capacity transit on the 10 West. I don't want to limit by saying that that observation or that reevaluation could also be outside of those corridors of the 10 West as well. So there is no guarantee whether option 1 or option 2 is selected, what will happen for our 10 West corridor.
Okay, everybody, I am seeing that there are no additional questions at this time. We will give everybody a few more minutes to think about everything that we've heard today and submit any final questions because there is still time in this meeting. If you happen to leave this meeting today and think about your question after, you can always contact the Capital Extension team with my email address. You would email ebrubio@valleymetro.org with any additional questions that you may have. Additionally, this is a good time to remind everybody to fill out their comment forms. So there are a few different ways to do that. You can scan the QR code on screen, or you could go to valleymetro.org/CAPEX. The comment form is embedded right on that front page for you. Just scroll down underneath the narrated video, and you can fill out the form directly there. Again, question 1 is asking, what do you prioritize? Would you like CAPEX to move forward as planned, or are you open to a reevaluation? Don't stop there. Don't stop your questionnaire there. Continue answering the questions. Number 2 will ask which route you prefer. And there are additional opportunities to add comments throughout the rest of the form. Okay, looks like we just needed a little bit of time. There is an additional question. Brett, moderator, please.
No problem. Is there no alignment option for each direction of the A line to stay separately running until 15th Avenue on Washington and Jefferson respectively, or is that option no longer considered?
I can field that question. So I believe what this question is asking is if we can have single track loop the way we had previously proposed it. In other words, the westbound train going down Washington and the eastbound train still returning on Jefferson. One of the things through the feedback that we heard from the public, as well as through working with our contractors and partners, was that there was a value engineering opportunity to combine the tracks into one location, minimize disruption to the public during construction, and keep the costs lower if we combine the tracks into one alignment. So at this point in time, there is not a current alternative that moves forward with separate tracks on 2 different streets. There is only the alternative to do dual track down Jefferson at this point to go westerly to 15th Avenue.
Thank you. Next question. If an alternative is selected, how soon would construction be able to start? I know that construction was supposed to start later in 2026.
So to answer that question, it depends on the alternative selected. If council chooses to reevaluate, that wouldn't be a possibility in 2026. If council chose one of the 3 alternatives that were presented, primarily 16th Avenue North and 16th Avenue South, the intent is to stay on schedule with what the preliminary direction was. So sometime in 2026, we would be starting construction on either 16th Avenue North or South. 7th Avenue North, we don't have the answers to that just yet because we haven't figured out how long it would take us to basically retool our environmental on that and re-get approval. So that could start in late 26, or it could be postponed to even later. But that is what we know today.
Could you speak anything on the art that was originally chosen for the truncated route, if there was any?
I can.
Oh, go ahead, Paul.
Okay, I can speak to the art. So right now, the art that was we had contracted some artists. We have them on board. Again, this is something that gets paid through the city of Phoenix to add art to our corridors. We had started some preliminary design on art, but we haven't gotten flushed that out by any means. And so we are currently looking at, depending on which alignment is selected, if an alignment is selected, we would have to make a determination on where that art would be placed. Typically, you'll see art near our stations. A lot of times it's addressed on the handrail or within the station itself. If you've driven to our South Central location, you've seen it incorporated on all of our stations. So at this point in time, the art is not finalized, but the art that was previously planned, we are hoping to incorporate into one of the new alignments should they be selected.
Okay, let's get
Nope.
that QR code up on screen at this time. Thank you very much. So again, I should begin by saying that we do not have any additional questions submitted at this time. So I will conclude by first thanking you for participating. Thank you for your wonderful questions and thank you for your attention during your lunch hour. We really do appreciate your participation in this process. Feedback and filling out those comment forms is really the core at how this project moves forward. So please take the opportunity to fill out the comment form and send it. Send it to your people. Send it to your friends, your family, your coworkers, anybody who may be interested in having a say in the future of light rail and how it moves throughout Phoenix. Now, Marcus, before we conclude, do you have any final words?
Yes, the only thing that I would say to all of our attendees to today's meeting is that this is a critical decision. Our mayor and our council definitely want to hear from you all. If you see, we have a multitude of different ways that we're trying to get this information out. And the reason being is because our mayor and council know that this is a heavy decision that they have before them. And they want to make sure that they have informed mayor and council before they make this decision. They want to make sure that they know what the community, their thoughts are, their desires are. They want to know what the community is saying, what are the challenges, what are the things what are the areas of support, so that they can make a decision based on that information, as well as the technical and financial aspects that go along with projects like this. So one thing I would just say is that please make sure that you fill out that feedback form. Please share it with others. And this is a critical time for your voice to be heard as we look at what the future of rail could be for West Phoenix.
Thank you, everybody. That does conclude our meeting today. If you have any additional questions after this meeting, you can email the email address on screen, ebrubio@valleymetro.org. If you want a refresher about everything that we have discussed here today, there's also that narrated video available at valleymetro.org/CAPEX. Thank you, everyone.